and YouTube fans of DX Engineering. Well, you made it through another weekend. It's time for Tuesdays with DX Engineering. And this is a show where predominantly we will feature DX Engineering employees. And some of these people you can talk to on the phone almost every day of the week here at DX Engineering to help, to answer questions, maybe to provide some guidance. And today we have Michael, KI8R. Hello, Michael.
Hello, Tim. How you doing?
Good, good, Michael. It's 1815 Zulu on January 30 of 2024. And of course, we're just about through January. And last weekend was Winter Field Day. Boy, there was a lot of activity.
There was a lot of. It seems like that Winterfield Day has really taken on a life of its own. It's a good thing.
It has. And of course, last week on the phones, there was lots of questions and guys, getting ready, getting coax, getting radios, and getting power supplies.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Michael, when a customer asks you about power supplies for their radio, their 100-watt radio, what kind of advice do you give them?
Well, it really comes down to, what are their needs today and what are their needs going forward. So, always want a little headroom with a power supply, and not just buying right at the limit of your radio, but maybe a little bit extra. We talk a lot about, budget. Is there one that they've been looking at? We talk a lot about switching supplies versus linear supplies, things like that.
And speaking, let's talk about some of this headroom. A typical 100-watt radio will draw at least 21 amps on key down. So that would be if you're running full 100 watts on FT8 or running CW. And you don't want a power supply that just does 20 amps or 21 amps, right?
Right, exactly. No, you want something that's going to have at least 25 to 30 amps continuous.
Right, right. So, and you have to be careful about the way the manufacturers state that. They have peak load capability and then continuous. And you just said continuous, and that's very important. I know, for instance, Samlex has a 1235, and you say, well, 1235, 12 volts at 35 amps, but that 35 amps is a peak current, right?
Correct.
And so continuous current is less than that, but it's still really good for a 100-watt radio, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's perfect. We probably sell more of those than anything else, from what I've seen. And very popular supply, value priced, and they seem to really do a good job.
I've had several Samlex power supplies, and they are really reliable. I think that's the other thing, Michael. You and I look at what kind of returns and warranty activity there is, and Samlex is just been good. And what about Astron, Michael? What do you think about it?
Well, okay, so let's talk about Astron. I have two RS35Ms that are north of 40 years old, and never given me a day of trouble. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have ones that fail. We do, but not very often. Astron makes an awesome solid supply.
And they've got protection in it for overcurrent and short circuits, things like that. What do you think linear power supplies versus switching power supplies?
Well, linears are obviously quieter, RF-wise, and although the switching supplies that we sell seem to be quiet on the ham bands, and I don't know of any that we sell that have had issues inside the ham band. So that's been a good thing.
And this quietness, over the weekend, we were working the 160-meter event, and one of the operators had brought some switching power supplies, weren't Samlex, and there were some issues with noise, and we got through it with a couple of things, Michael. Properly bonding the power supply to the rest of the equipment, and then also some liberal use of number 31 ferrite.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can help reduce the noise. And Michael, you want to talk about your experience about a switching power supply and how close it is to your antenna system.
Well, yeah, the problem with switching supplies is that, you have wires coming out of the back of them, which can act as an antenna. And, if they are radiating anything on the ham bands, you're going to hear it. So that's an issue. And so you're right, ferrite on the cables coming off of those supplies will definitely help mitigate a lot of that issue.
Right. So the ferrite can knock down that antenna idea coming out the back, and then distance from your antenna system.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? That distance from your antenna system is predicated that all your coax connectors are tight.
Yeah, absolutely.
And boy, I have talked about tightening up connectors hand tight, and then get the channel lock pliers and go another quarter turn.
Yep.
And get them really tight.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to focus a lot on that in 2024. So many times, even amplifiers that are faulting because of loose connectors,
Yep.
and hand tight is just not tight enough, Michael.
No, it's not. And how many times have I been on someone's tower, replacing antenna or replacing coax or whatever, and reached up and literally just barely twisted the coax and the connector, and it just fell right off.
Right.
So,
That kind of thing. And then also, Michael, I know you've been there. No solder on the shield.
oh Lord, don't get me started.
And in a lot of cases, I guess maybe back when I was a kid, some of the first ham stations I visited, the guy didn't know any better, and he would just jam the shield in there and hope for the best
Yeah,
in the PL259.
and I've been guilty of that too. When I was young and dumb, and started in this hobby when I was 16, I didn't know any better, and so yeah, I've been there. But I bought the tools, uh, and the connectors a few years ago. I started doing the crimp solder connectors that we sell. It makes it simple, it's quick, it's easy. I'll never go back.
Yeah, I mean the crimp solder system that we have here at DX Engineering really makes it it's absolutely easy to make really good connections. And getting that shield properly connected, whether it's with 400 max,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't solder that shield.
Nope.
If you go to the Times site, and the DX Engineering site talks about the foil shield
Mm-hmm.
and the braid shield, and you cannot solder that. You
Right.
have to crimp it. And so your comments, Michael, about the crimp connector is right on. And if you're using RG213, and I have to say that RG213 is my favorite coax, you got to solder that shield.
Yep.
And there are various ways to do that. And but you got to, because that's what creates the tight RF environment in your station. And Michael, how about loose connections or bad shield soldering when you're trying to use a solid state amplifier?
Oh, yeah, that's just not even just a solid state, any amplifier. You're just asking for problems.
Yeah, that is just so important. And fellows that are using 120 volts or 110 volts for their amplifiers, that's a dicey thing too, just because of the current you're drawing.
Right. And, I have a 20 amp circuit, dedicated circuit just for my shack for 120, and then a 240 circuit as well. And that's a 20 amp circuit as well. But you're right. Trying to run off of 120 with an amplifier is, unless you're only running a few hundred watts, it can be problematic.
Right. You're asking too much of the 120 volt circuit, and you have voltage drop because of the distance back to the main panel, etc. So, but we could spend a whole time on that. Let's take a look at the chat room, and then I want to talk about rotor controls too with you, Michael, because I know you've got a lot of experience there. Um, let's go up here. We've got Dawn on from Philadelphia, Whiskey Juliet 3 United, and our friend John, November Juliet 4 Zulu. And hi, Tim and Michael. Thanks for doing these sessions. And let's see, we've got a couple more from Dawn there. Been enjoying the vertical arrays videos with Callum. Yeah, good. And we're going to have Callum on the show here soon again. From Northern Africa, it's Echo Alpha 9 Alpha Charlie Delta. And Anwal, thanks for being here. Our good friend up in Alaska, it's Kevin, Kilo Lima 7 Kilo Yankee. And Kevin, I'm hearing good things about your 160 meter signal. And Dan, WA4 Mike Oscar Mike, is on with us. Hello and good afternoon, Tim and Michael. Things are looking up here. We might see the sun on Thursday. And Joe Eisenberg, K0NEB. I use your crimp tools and connectors. And he likes LMR 400. If you like LMR 400, you're going to love DXE 400 Max. Even a little bit better. And got Don. He says 240 volts AC is the way to go for an amplifier. Need to get my SB220 reassembled. Michael, did you ever use an SB220?
I have not. I have a good friend that found one that was literally cherry, and he had it recapped, and it's just as good as the day it was new.
Yeah, there's great amplifiers, and that was the second amplifier I built. I built an SB200, and then I said, well, let's go to the big boy and the 220, and lots of great used 220s. And like you say, if you recap them, let's see here. Luis says, I love my Astrons. Upgrading to a 7610 with a receiving loop. See you guys at Dayton. That's Whiskey 7 Golf Bravo Alpha. And Joe says, I use your Arco rotor controller. Fantastic. After they got me an adapter for my high gain Ham 4 rotor. And Sandy's on from Germany, Delta Lima 1 Queen. And from California, it's Whiskey 6 Charlie Radio Tango. And Tommy is on from Georgia, Kilo 4 Victor Tango Echo. And so lots of fun things going on. But Michael, let's talk for a minute here about the Arco controller. What are you hearing from customers? I see the Arco right over your shoulder.
Yeah, I all caps love that controller. It's for me, it's a game changer. If you can use a cell phone with a touchscreen, you can use this controller. It's so much nicer to have a preset, hit the preset for EU. My antenna does its thing. I don't have to sit there and hold anything. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and it will control virtually every rotor that's out there.
Exactly.
And lots of good support. I'm still partial to the Green Heron, which we've been selling for years and years. But boy, when you see that map display and all the nice things, features of the Arco, it's no wonder. I mean, like I say, you just look over your left shoulder there, and what a beautiful, you can see the gray line and everything else. So it's just beautiful.
And I'm told from the guys at Arco that they're working on satellite and EME for this thing too, so azimuth and elevation.
Wow. And it's remotable too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can control it remote. So that
control from your cell phone. It's a beautiful thing.
On your cell phone. What can't you do with a cell phone these days?
I know, right?
Well, Michael, thanks so much for coming on, and I want to say thanks to you and all of the DX Engineering sales and technical staff for helping customers have fun with the best hobby in the world. Michael, you do a great job. We're thrilled to have you on the team. And Michael, are you going to be in the booth in Dayton?
Oh, I will.
All right. So customers can come and see Michael firsthand, and we're going to have Michael on again soon, before Dayton even. And Michael might even go in depth in another product and really, really be good. before we go, let's go back to the chat room for just a second. We got Paul on, Kilo Echo 5, Whiskey Mike Alpha. And Joe says, I just tapped the screen and it goes. So he likes his Arco. And Skip Longpass says, check out Michael's review of the Arco. It's on YouTube on the DX Engineering channel. And Michael, you did a great job with that video. And thanks so much for doing that. And thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thank you. I'm getting ready to make a video on my favorite POTA antenna, the Cheligan's GP750. So that's coming soon.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to that. And thanks again. And thanks to all of you for watching today. And we'll see you next time here at DX Engineering. Until then, 73.
73.